Hey guys,
listen up.
today.
So I have to wait here for ticket collection. These folks from Indianapolis are going to be leading you down the bus. You follow the pathway, eventually you'll come to a small ladder. After you climb that ladder, there's a sign that says "Wait here for Ranger." You can go past that about 10 steps, okay? And then on the floor of the alcove, you may sit down. There's a staircase that leads down into the bus. Don't go down the stairs. Got it? Cool. Tickets? Oh, that's right. You get it.
Is that us?
Portland. No, Oregon. Just Oregon. Okay, good. Okay, cool. Welcome. Choose where you're from. Italy. From Torino. And you're from Denver, huh? Alright, you're okay. Cool. Welcome. Hi there. Let's see. Hey, huh? Where are you from? California, huh? Excellent. Welcome aboard. I mean, you're not boarding anything, but welcome. Hi, let's see. Just you, huh? Texas?
Salt Lake City, actually.
Okay,
But
well,
going to
okay.
Texas.
Alright, cool. Escaping, huh?
Yep.
3 people. Where are you from?
New Jersey.
New Jersey. Wow.
Oh,
Okay,
wow.
brilliant.
East
Welcome.
Coast.
How you doing, guys?
We haven't been here before, but we did now. Alright guys, so now we are walking down this canyon, and it's gonna be cold. It's gonna be cold walking down the canyon, and yeah, this is fun. This is probably the funnest thing we did on vacation ever, right? And this is fun than sitting in the car playing video games all the time, just driving. Because guys, almost every day here, we were mostly almost all day driving. So.
Just to get here.
And guys, some people are from like Arizona, Utah, California, everywhere. Some people are not even from America here, and they drive here. That's even farther than New Jersey. This is fun, guys. So guys, comment below if you walk down the Grand Canyon like this. But it's not really, guys, it's not really the Grand Canyon. I mean, it could be the Grand Canyon. So guys, this is the Grand Canyon. Wow. Yep. Guys, this is the Grand Canyon. We're walking down the Grand Canyon right now. We're walking down so the video is called Walking Down the Grand Canyon, like we are doing right now.
See, I told you there's kind of a ramp. Walking down Mesa Verde.
And guys, this video is going to go uploaded tonight, as in right. So this video is going to be uploaded tonight. You can get uploaded now because we don't have a computer now, and there's no internet for us to even get it out because there's no internet in the car. So at the hotel, we'll post it, edit it, and all that. And yeah. As you see, we're walking down the Grand Canyon. Not the Grand Canyon. I call it the Grand Canyon because, I mean, it looks like the Grand Canyon. Look, doesn't it, guys? This is the Grand Canyon. Now we're walking up.
You see this part here.
What? Oh God, we have to climb. Then you go first. Dad, come on. Fine, I'll go first. Alright guys, so now we're going up this ladder. And guys, we might...
May I pass by here, please? Would you mind? Thank you. Excuse me. Thanks.
Yeah, no problem.
Alright guys, so as you see, we're walking down the Grand Canyon right now. And we are... Alright guys, so now we're going. So let's go.
You know that room over that way?
Dad, and this is the thing we saw in the video.
Yeah, don't go to the edge. Yeah.
Where are you gonna sit?
We don't have to pile in too tight, but try to be efficient, okay?
So this is the thing we saw
That's right.
on the TV. And now we're here again.
That's okay, Angela. You can use our shade.
I saw a video of my dad here too. Right here.
You saw a video of your dad when he was a kid coming here, is that right?
Yeah.
Was he about your size?
Yeah.
Boy,
It looks the same.
it looks the same. Yes. Yeah, that's a good thing, isn't it? You have to imagine that at one time these buildings had multiple stories, 3, 4 stories high, and from the top of a tall building you could very easily use a ladder to get up there. Cool, huh? Wow. Further on your question, look at my laser, okay? You see that cool door up there? Look right here and right there. You see those little grooves in the rock? That's where a ladder rested against that door. Cool, right? There you go. They climb. Next question.
How long were people living here?
In the alcove itself, Club Palace dates from the 13th century, so the greater part of 100 years. But in Mesa Verde, in total, the ancestral Pueblo people lived here for some 7 centuries. This is the tail end of that occupation.
There it is, guys.
Yes, the babies arrived. Good.
I'm gonna stand.
Hey, watch your head. Very well, you've arrived. Good. Maybe we could have you guys move over a bit and make some room for others. That'd be very kind of you. Thank you. Very good. Grab a seat, please. Cool. Excellent. All right. There you go. Drink up. All right. That's water, right?
Yeah.
You're the last ones, huh?
We are the
We're all
last
here.
ones,
Okay,
yeah.
cool. Wow, this is strange. Yeah, on a normal day, like I said a week ago, and it was way busy in the park, there's like 55 people. So, this is really cool. You guys don't know what a blessing it is to have so few of you, okay? That's great. Anyways, everyone, welcome to Club Palace. We have the privilege of being in the presence of the largest cliff dwelling here in Mesa Verde National Park. Now, remember, cliff dwelling is a specific term used to describe the village which is situated within an alcove. Now, if we were to remove that building and stick it on the mesa top or down in one of the valleys, it then would become a valley pueblo or a mesa top pueblo. And there are, in this park and in the Four Corners region, some of the largest settlements of the northern southwest. And so this is today 150 rooms and 21 kivas. Kivas being those circular subterranean rooms we see scattered about. But those other communities, those cities that we talk about, places like Yucca House, Goodman Point, Sand Canyon, they're on the order of 900 rooms with 150 kivas covering several acres. Dozens of examples of public architecture like plazas and courtyards and towers and so on. And they exist, they're out there. But this one, because of the limitation of the physical alcove, is only 150 rooms remaining today. So it is not the biggest gig in town, but it is the largest cliff dwelling, okay? Now today it represents a fully excavated archaeological site, meaning all of the cool stuff has already been removed, less the walls that remain. Now that is of course later by real archaeologists, but earlier than that it was non-archaeologists. It was pot hunters and grave robbers and thieves of time. And so to understand this history and how it played out, we have to go back in memory. First, we revisit the 13th century, okay, the 1200s. This is a time of great change for the Pueblo people. We see that for 6 centuries before, they were mostly living on the mesa top. And for some unknown reason, there's a region-wide change in settlement and habitation. They start deconstructing some of their mesa top villages and moving them into the alcoves in the 13th century. And for the greater part of 100 years, they were building and adding on to their community. And by the end of the 13th century, they decided it was time to go. So they moved away. Now, archaeology and history, like all things, changes over time. So if you were here in the old days, like 20 or 30 years ago, you might have heard something radically different, okay? Instead of saying the Pueblo people were moving into the alcoves for an unknown reason, and then they left the region at the end of the 13th century, we said something like, these are defensive sites. The Anasazi Indians, the peaceful farmers of the desert, they were concerned with defense, and so they moved into these alcoves for protection. Anybody remember that? Yeah, you do? Okay. How long ago were you here?
I'm 44, so I came here the first time when I was maybe 8, 9.
Oh, just a young thing. Okay,
Then
wow.
a few
Okay.
times with my team.
Afterwards, and you heard that history, right?
Yeah,
Anybody
we
else?
heard it. We heard
Yeah.
that when you said it. I was like, oh, that's so soft. That was so fluffy.
Yeah, okay, yeah, well, new archaeology, yeah. What do you got?
Yeah, I was here in 2005 and then before that in 1991.
1991.
And I heard the same story both times.
Wow, wow, that's too recent. Wow. So anyways, yeah, we said something like these were defensive sites, but in modern archaeology, more critical decolonial archaeology, getting in the minds of the Pueblo people from the 13th century and speaking on their behalf in terms of their decision-making policy is something that's quite impossible. So we don't do it anymore. Whatever reason it was, maybe defensive, maybe economic, getting closer to water, saving farmland, maybe religious or cultural movements, we don't know. For the greater part of 100 years, yeah, they added on to the village and then they moved away. That is something also quite different. If you were here back then, you might have heard about how the Pueblo, the Anasazi Indians of the desert, mysteriously and abruptly vanished without a trace. Remember that one? Yeah.
That one, yeah.
What was kind of wild back then is that there would be like contemporary descendants among us when we were saying stuff like that. There'd be like
Yeah.
people from Hopi and Arizona or
it's like-
some of the New Mexico Pueblo people, and like
like
the
I'm-
Indians vanished. We don't know where they went, you know.
Like, I'm
So like the Hopi guy in the back of the crowd, he's like looking around, like what the hell, you know. So we don't do that one anymore, okay? So things change. That's just a taste of what we're going to be talking about today. Anyways, guys, when they did leave, remember that it would be hundreds of years later after that Spanish people from Europe would arrive with equestrian technology, horses, okay? So when they left, they walked away, and the items they needed for travel had to be carried on their own backs. So much of their human material possessions were left behind in these alcove sites, okay? Number one, we're in a dry climate in the southwest. Number two, in the alcoves, where those villages were tucked away, you had the prime conditions protecting them and sheltering them from the weathering effects of the elements for the preservation of perishable organic materials. I mean, the cool stuff in archaeology is not what we think. Pottery is amazing, but like we'll still find whole pots on the mesa top. They're that well preserved once you fire them. But the rare stuff in the archaeological record is stuff like cotton textiles, turkey feather blankets, rabbit fur robes, yucca fiber sandals, human hair cordage, yucca baskets and ropes, dog fur sashes, that kind of stuff, right? Normally in humid environments, exposed to the elements, they deteriorate very quickly. But here, in those alcoves, were the prime conditions to preserve these things. And so at one time, these sites were billowing out with artifacts of great quality and quantity. And so after the Pueblo people leave, other tribes like the Utes and the Navajos reoccupy the land and are using the resources here. They're hunting, they're collecting stuff. But as far as we can tell, archaeologically speaking, other tribes of people didn't enter these spaces and mess with them. They were known about, but respected and left alone. So fast forward till about the 1880s when we get westward expansion of European American people. And these new settlers were coming into the region, people like the Wetherells, right? You heard that name before? On your park map, it's the other side of our park, right? Wetherell Mesa. As the story goes, the Wetherells settled outside of the present-day park and they become friends with the Ute people because in the 1880s, this is formerly part of Ute territory. The Utes had lived here for many centuries at that time. And so the Utes and the Wetherells strike an agreement to allow the Wetherells to bring their cattle into Mesa Verde. And if you don't speak Spanish, Mesa Verde means green table in reference to the vegetation on the mesa tops, okay? And so as the story goes, the Wetherells brought their cattle up, they were eating the green stuff, and then all of a sudden it's this late December in the 1880s, it's a cold winter day, this freak snowstorm happens, cows scatter and get lost. And so two of these Wetherill brothers from the family are riding around on horseback looking for stray cattle in the middle of a blizzard. I'm already suspect about the story. I don't know about you guys, okay? Anyways, supposedly they were across the canyon from where we are now on the mesa top near Sun Temple. And so as they approached the edge of the canyon, they say, for a brief moment as they stood there peering out into the land to find these lost cattle, the snow sort of let up a little, the clouds thinned out, and a shaft of sunlight shone into the alcove. And through the snow flurries, the Wetherills had their first glimpse of this major city made of stone that they would later name Cliff Palace. And behold, a discovery was made. All right, thank you. You're free to believe that history, okay? That's sort of our older colonial historization. It's an example today of what we would refer to as indigenous erasure. The idea that when Western people arrived, it's a discovery. Meanwhile, there was like Utes riding around on these mesas, hunting and living here for many centuries before. And by logic, if we say the Wetherills discovered this place, we're presuming that the Utes managed to miss all 600 documented cliff dwellings, okay? They just didn't see them. Anyways, what happened next when the Wetherills showed up? Well, we read their journals and they talk about coming to this land. First, they talk about the Ute people and how the Utes were guiding them into the territory. And then they talk about going into these places and finding them in such fantastic states of preservation, as if people had just walked away weeks before. They'd go into rooms and they'd find pairs of sandals against a wall. They would find pots perfectly left in a fire where the ash was still around. They would find textiles folded up and put around the edges of walls and so on. So this place was so filled with artifacts at one time that it was amazing. But as soon as the Wetherills arrived, it's the beginning of it. Thank you. As soon as the Wetherills arrive, it's the beginning of a new era, an era characterized by massive amounts of destruction, thievery, removal, pot hunting, and grave robbing of the archaeological material, including the human skeletal remains of people that were laid to rest in very loving and intentional graves. Those things were beginning to be desecrated quite heavily in the 1890s and the 1880s. And in the 1890s, the Wetherills had become guides to other non-native people. They were leading people into this land so that they could exploit the place and dig up things. Now, it wasn't archaeology as we see it today, where it was like archaeology is very meticulous and very scientific. Back then, it was more about materialism, collecting like whole pots and human skeletons and artifacts so that they could be shipped off to museums and so on. And so we were losing tons of stuff during this time. And in the 1890s, the Wetherills led this European guy to Mesa Verde, Gustav Nordenskjöld, a young European baron scientist who brought a camera and was photographing a lot of these sites, providing for us one of our earliest photo documentary records. As a scientist, he was also mapping out as best he could the villages. He was documenting artifacts, digging up burials, trying to save things up, because he saw, Gustav Nordenskjöld saw, how much people were coming with shovels and picks and just plowing through the places to get to those treasures. So as a scientist, he wanted to collect things on his own and then put them in a museum where they would be protected for the future, so we'd have a record of this culture to study. So voting is quite a thing that we enjoy in this country, so let's enact that privilege now. How many people believe Gustav Nordenskjöld collecting stuff from here and putting it in a museum so that it would be safe from pot hunters and grave robbers and thieves of time was a good thing? Raise your hand if you agree. Okay, we got one over there. Go on, put your hand up. Okay, good. Be proud of your vote. And you guys as well. Okay, well, let me finish the story, okay? This museum, I'm afraid, wasn't like local or not even in the country. The museum that things from here, including human remains of the Pueblo ancestors, they get shipped off and they end up on a journey in a strange foreign place, someplace we now know as Helsinki, Finland. And Americans, white Americans at that time heard about this and they sort of woke up and they're like, wait a minute, what the hell is going on? We have a European guy coming to America, taking our cultural heritage and shipping it to some museum in Europe. They're like, what is this, Egypt? Come on! Sort of, you know, it really was. And so there began a change of public consciousness. And white Americans, for the first time, were like, you know, these places just aren't the ruins of some extinct indigenous culture, but actually they represent a tangible part of our American heritage, part of our American story, something that in this very young settler colonial country of the U.S., gives us a history, gives us a distinction to that of Europe, where a lot of people were immigrating from. And so people then wanted to save these places. And with the passage of the 1906 American Antiquities Act, this place then became federally protected. And that's why today you're in a World Heritage Site. You're in one of the country's most restricted parks in terms of public access. It is for the protection and preservation of our cultural heritage in this country. All right? So let's vote. How many people think creating a park out of this land was a good idea? Unanimous. Let me finish the story. When we think of national parks in the American West especially, some of these lands are huge areas. And a lot of times we have a concept of them. We think of them as wilderness, devoid of humanity or civilization, terra nullius, vacant land. And that's really a concept from the settler imagination, because when we think about these landscapes, our true history teaches us that these landscapes were never empty or vacant, but many of them were the homelands of many diverse indigenous nations. And this was Ute land when we decided to make a park out of it. And so by the stroke of a pin and the whim of the feds, this land gets converted into a federal preserve from Ute territory. And the Utes lost 52,000 acres of their indigenous homeland to create our much celebrated Mesa Verde National Park. That's why today, if you're at Balcony House and you're looking across the canyon, that's one Ute reservation. And if you're over at Longhouse on Wetherill Mesa and you look across the canyon, that's another Ute reservation, because we carved up the middle to create this park today. Many national parks share a similar history. And so that's really our history. That's the good, the bad, the ugly, and the brilliant, but all wrapped up into what we usually don't talk about. So instead of hearing about the Wetherills discovering this place and the Anasazi disappearing and then a park being created, real history is more complicated than that, all right? Anyways, guys, returning to the Pueblo world, when we look at a place like this, we're reminded that all of the architecture, the masonry, the engineering that went into the construction of this village, it was all brought to us by agriculture, farming in the desert. Now, the Pueblo people were master farmers, but where we are located now, there really are no lakes, rivers, or streams anywhere close by. So the Pueblo, they practice a very specialized type of farming called dry land agriculture, based on precipitation. And the Mesa